The chipped porcelain clock on the mantel ticked with a slow, deliberate rhythm, each second a heavy beat against Ilara's weary heart. Sunlight, filtered through the lace curtains, painted the room in patterns of dust and memory. It had been 10 years since Thomas had left. 10 years of waiting, of whispered prayers and half-finished meals left cold on the table. 10 years of clinging to the hope that one day he would walk through the door, the sound of his laughter echoing through the quiet house once more. She ran a hand over the worn fabric of his armchair, the one he used to sink into after a long day of work before the war took him. The threads still seemed to hold a faint echo of his warmth. She had kept everything exactly as he left it, his pipe on the side table, his favorite book still open to the page he last read. It was a shrine to a love that seemed to exist only in the past. The village had moved on. Women who had waved their husbands and sons goodbye alongside her now shared stories of their return. They spoke of shared meals, of quiet evenings by the fire, of the joy of reunion. Ilara, however, had only silence. No letters, no news, just the gnawing emptiness of unanswered questions. The local postman, old Mr. Gable, had become a familiar figure, his visits a mixture of anticipation and dread. Each time, Ilara would hold her breath, searching his face for any flicker of recognition, any sign that today would be different. But his gaze was always kind, tinged with the pity she had grown to expect. Then one crisp autumn afternoon, a day that tasted of wood smoke and fallen leaves, Mr. Gable arrived carrying a letter. It was small, unassuming, addressed in a familiar hand that made Ilara's breath catch in her throat. The ink was faded, the paper yellowed with age, and the postmark. It was from a town she vaguely recognized as being near the front lines, a place Thomas had been stationed years ago. Ilara's hands trembled as she broke the seal. The paper crackled, a sound as sharp as a breaking heart. The words swam before her eyes, written in Thomas's distinctive, slightly slanted script. "My dearest Ilara," it began. "If you are reading this, then I have failed to return to you once more. I meant to carry this with me, to send it the moment I stepped off the boat, but the truth is, well, I fear I won't be stepping off any boats. I write this not because I have given up, but because I cannot bear the thought of you not knowing the depth of my love for you." The rest of the letter was a torrent of words she had longed to hear, words of longing and devotion, of plans for their future, of his unwavering hope for a life shared with her under a sky full of stars. There were descriptions of sunsets he had watched, thinking of her, the gentle breeze that reminded him of her hair, and the hope that his words would somehow find their way to her. Ilara read it again and again, tears streaming down her face, blurring the already faded ink. She had waited for this letter, this tangible proof of his love for so long, but it had arrived too late. It felt like a cruel trick of fate, a whisper from the past that only served to heighten the ache of the present. Thomas was gone. It was there, between the lines of his carefully crafted words, in the resignation of his tone. He had known, even as he wrote it, that he might never see her again. And yet, he poured his heart into the letter, a final act of love across the abyss of time and war. She clutched the letter to her chest, the paper soft against her skin. She could almost feel his presence beside her, a phantom warmth that both comforted and tormented. She had always held on to the hope of his return, even when reason told her it was impossible. Now, she held on to a different kind of hope, that she would one day find peace in the knowledge that even in the face of war and death, his love for her had endured, reaching her across the years, a whispered promise carried on the wings of a letter that had arrived too late. The porcelain clock ticked on, its rhythm a constant reminder of time moving forward, even as Ilara remained suspended between the past and a future she now had to face alone. But as she looked around the room, no longer a shrine, but a home imbued with the echo of love, she knew that she was not entirely alone. Thomas's love, finally delivered, would always be with her, a beacon in the darkness, a love that had survived even if he had not.